Every sensor in the Avengers facility flatlined at the same moment, every screen going dark simultaneously, every instrument that Schild had ever built to measure power and threat, and the unknown capacity of beings beyond human scale all falling silent at once. And in the 3 seconds of absolute stillness that followed, before the backup systems kicked in and the emergency lighting turned everything red, Nick Fury stood in the center of the command room and understood. With the particular clarity that comes only at the outer edge of genuine fear, that every calculation they had ever made about what they were capable of handling was wrong. This is the story of the day Goku came to the Marvel Universe alone. No Dragon Balls, no Vegeta, no second chances. Just a Saiyan raised on Earth who decided that a world full of heroes deserved to be tested. And what happened next broke every rule both universes thought was permanent. So hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because this story goes places that nobody saw coming, and you cannot afford to miss a single part. It does not begin with a battle cry or a flash of light, or any of the dramatic signals that the Avengers have learned, over years of impossible situations, to treat as the opening notes of something catastrophic. It begins instead with a single man falling from the sky at a speed that the atmospheric monitoring stations register as impossible for an object without propulsion, falling not like something dropped, but like something that has chosen to descend. And the distinction matters because everything that has ever fallen on this world uninvited has done so without choice, without intention, without the specific quality of deliberateness that the radar operators at the nearest Schild outpost notice in the trajectory and flag immediately. Because the trajectory is not a ballistic arc. It is a straight vertical line, and straight vertical lines do not occur in nature. They occur when something with a will decides exactly where it wants to be and goes there without deviation. Tony Stark gets the alert while he is in the middle of a conversation about something that will immediately become irrelevant, and the data his suit pulls from the monitoring stations in the first 4 seconds of analysis produces a reading that makes him go very quiet in the middle of a sentence. Because the energy signature descending toward the surface of the Earth is not Asgardian and not Chitauri, and not any variety of cosmic threat that his systems have been calibrated to recognize. It is something that his instruments are registering as biological, as a living being, as a single person. And the power output of that single person is doing something to his sensors that sensors are not supposed to do, which is overflow, which is produce numbers that exceed the maximum value the display is designed to show. And Tony Stark has designed his displays with considerable headroom above anything he has ever expected to encounter. Steve Rogers is in the training facility when the alert reaches him, and he reads the initial report with the focused calm of someone who has long since made peace with the fact that the world is going to keep producing things that should not exist. And he notes the energy readings and notes the trajectory and notes the estimated point of impact, which is an open field 40 miles outside the city. And he thinks about the word impact, and then he thinks about the word chosen, because the field is empty. Completely empty, and whatever is descending has selected it with the same precision that a person selects a chair in a room. And the selection of an empty field by something with that level of power reads, to Steve's tactical mind, not as aggression but as consideration, as the act of something that is aware of the fragility of everything around the place it has chosen to land. The crater that forms when Goku touches down is not the crater of a collision. It is the crater of a landing, which is a subtle distinction that becomes less subtle when you examine the edges, because the edges of a collision crater are ragged and explosive outward, and the edges of this crater are clean and compressed inward, as if the ground has simply been asked very firmly to make room, and at the center of it, standing with his hands relaxed at his sides and his orange gi slightly dusty from the descent, is a man who looks at the assembled response team that has arrived in the 7 minutes since the landing with an expression of genuine and uncomplicated friendliness. The expression of someone who has arrived somewhere new and finds the people there interesting and is looking forward to whatever comes next. Thor arrives first among the heavy hitters because Thor travels by lightning and lightning does not get stuck in traffic. And he lands 30 feet from the crater and looks at the man standing in it with the evaluating gaze of someone who has spent 900 years learning to read power in the way that a musician reads a room, feeling it before understanding it. And what he feels when he looks at this man in the orange uniform standing in a self-made crater in a field outside the city is something that makes the hand holding Mjolnir tighten slightly. Not from fear, but from the instinctive response of a warrior's body to the proximity of something that registers, below the level of conscious thought, as genuinely extraordinary. And Thor has stood in the presence of genuinely extraordinary things many times in his long life, and his body has learned to pay attention when it sends that signal. Goku looks at Thor and his expression does the thing it always does when he senses a strong fighter, which is shift from friendly to interested. The way a light changes quality when something passes in front of it. And he says hello in the easy, direct way he says everything. And then he says that he can feel the power coming off the hammer and that it is impressive. And he says impressive the way someone says it when they mean it and are not performing politeness. And Thor, who has been called many things by many beings across many worlds, and who has developed considerable skill at distinguishing genuine recognition from flattery, receives this as the former, and responds to it the way he responds to genuine recognition, which is with the straightforward honesty of someone who respects the source. Tony arrives 20 seconds after Thor, and Vision 10 seconds after Tony. And in the 90 seconds that follow, the Avengers assemble in the field around the crater in the loose formation they default to when they are assessing rather than attacking. And Goku stands in the center of that formation and looks at each of them in turn with the patient curiosity of someone reading a menu. And then he asks, in the same easy voice, whether any of them want to spar. And the word spar lands in the middle of the formation like a stone dropped in still water, sending ripples outward through the assembled heroes in the form of exchanged glances and recalibrated assessments. Because spar is not the word of something that has come to destroy. Spar is the word of something that has come to find out. And finding out, in Goku's vocabulary, has always been the most honest and most complete form of respect he knows how to offer. The decision to engage is not made by any single person and not announced through any formal channel. It happens the way decisions happen when a group of people who have fought together long enough to think in the same rhythms all arrive at the same conclusion simultaneously. And what they conclude. Looking at this man standing in the crater with his hands relaxed and his expression open, and that specific quality of patient readiness radiating from him like heat from something that has been warm for a very long time, is that the word spar deserves a serious answer. And a serious answer from the Avengers means something that the rest of the world would not describe as sparring in any conventional sense, but that Goku. Watching them begin to move into position with the calm attention of someone who has done this particular kind of reading his entire life, recognizes immediately as exactly what he asked for. Thor goes first because Thor always goes first when there is something in front of him that his instincts have flagged as worthy. And what he brings is not the measured opening strike of someone testing an unknown, but the real thing. The full weight of Asgardian power channeled through 900 years of combat experience. The lightning coming down not as a warning shot, but as a genuine opening. Fast and precise and carrying within it the specific intention of someone who has decided that this opponent deserves to be taken seriously from the very first exchange. And the bolt covers the distance between them in no measurable time and hits Goku directly, and the field goes white for a full second from the discharge. And when the light clears, Thor is already moving into the follow-up, because he has learned over centuries that the first strike is only useful if the second is already in motion. Goku is standing exactly where he was, and his expression has completed the shift from interested to genuinely engaged, the shift that anyone who has ever fought him has learned to recognize as the moment the conversation becomes real. And he says that was good, says it with the specific warmth of someone who means it completely. And then he moves. And the movement is the first thing that recalibrates everyone watching, because the speed of it is not the speed of something enhanced or powered or technologically augmented. It is the speed of something that has trained so completely, and for so long that the body has stopped experiencing speed as effort, and experiences it instead as simply the natural pace of existing. And he covers the 30 feet between himself and Thor in a fraction of a second, and the exchange that follows is a blur of strikes and counters that the slower members of the assembled group can only partially track. A conversation conducted entirely in force and response that lasts 11 seconds and ends with Thor skidding backward across the field, leaving 2 parallel furrows in the earth, and looking at Goku with an expression that has moved a very long way from its starting point. Tony and Rhodey engage simultaneously because simultaneous is always better than sequential when the target has demonstrated the ability to track and respond faster than individual reaction time. And the coordinated repulsor barrage they lay down is the kind of thing that has resolved every previous situation that called for it. A wall of coherent energy that approaches from 2 angles and gives nothing in its path the geometric option of avoiding both. And Goku watches it coming with the particular stillness of someone calculating, and then he does something that makes Tony's suit flag an immediate alert, which is raise one hand and redirect the barrage, not block it, not absorb it, redirect it, deflecting the combined output of 2 Iron Man suits with the precise economy of movement of someone who has learned that the most efficient response to force is almost never to meet it directly, but to have a conversation with its direction. And the redirected energy hits the empty field behind him and carves a trench 50 meters long in the earth, and Tony stares at the readout in his helmet that is showing him what just happened and says, very quietly, that they are going to need a different approach. Scarlet Witch enters the engagement at this point because Wanda Maximoff has learned that there are situations where waiting for a clear opening is less useful than creating one. And what she brings is the hex in its most focused application, the reality-bending force that has rewritten the rules of entire pocket universes, directed at the probability field around Goku, with the intention of introducing enough chaos into his immediate causality that his ability to anticipate and respond is compromised. And for 3 full seconds, something happens that has not happened in any of the previous exchanges, which is that Goku actually pauses, standing in the middle of the field with his head slightly tilted, and his expression carrying the specific quality of someone encountering something genuinely new. And Wanda feels this pause and presses harder, layering the hex deeper. And Goku looks at his own hands for a moment the way someone looks at something that has briefly stopped behaving the way they expected. And then he smiles. And the smile is the most specific and the most revealing thing he has done since he landed, because it is the smile of someone who has just found something they were not expecting to find, which is a genuine surprise. And genuine surprises, for Goku, are rarer and more valuable than almost anything else the universe has ever offered him. He lets the Kai rise in response to Wanda's hex, not as aggression but as a natural equilibrium, the way a fire responds to wind by burning brighter rather than being extinguished. And the golden aura that comes up around him as the Kai rises is something that every instrument the Avengers have running registers simultaneously, and that Thor recognizes immediately, and that makes Steve Rogers, watching from the edge of the field, understand that what they have been experiencing so far has been the beginning of a conversation, and not the conversation itself. And the understanding settles over him with the particular weight of a tactical assessment that has just been completely revised. Because what Thor recognizes and what Steve understands in the same moment is that the Kai rising around Goku is not his full power. It is not close to his full power. It is the power of someone who has decided to take the next step. And the next step is still not the top of the staircase, and nobody in the field can currently see where the top of the staircase is. The ground beneath Goku's feet fractures outward in a perfect circle as the aura stabilizes, and the wind that comes off the energy differential flattens the grass in every direction and makes the air itself feel different, heavier and more present. The way air feels before a storm that is still some distance away, but that the atmosphere is already preparing for. And Goku looks at the assembled Avengers with that open, friendly expression that has not changed since he landed. And he says that this is more like it, and he says it with complete sincerity, with the genuine satisfaction of someone who has been looking for something and has finally found the right direction. And every hero in that field hears it and understands, in their own way and through their own specific frame of experience, that what just happened was not the escalation. It was the signal that the escalation is coming, and the signal alone is enough to make even Thor, who has never in 900 years backed away from anything, plant his feet more firmly in the earth and grip Mjolnir with both hands. What happens next is the thing that none of them will be able to describe accurately afterward, not because their memories are unreliable, but because the human mind, and the Asgardian mind, and even the synthetic mind of vision, are all built around frameworks of scale that have upper limits. And what Goku does in the next 4 minutes operates above those upper limits in a way that makes accurate description functionally impossible. Like trying to explain the size of the ocean to someone who has only ever seen a glass of water. The words exist, but the words are not adequate to the thing they are being asked to carry. And every person in that field will spend the rest of their lives reaching for better words and never quite finding them. Super Saiyan Blue arrives not with announcement, but with a change in the quality of everything. The air, the light, the feeling in the chest that has nothing to do with sound or sight, but with something more fundamental. The sense that the rules of the immediate environment have been renegotiated at a level below perception. And the blue light that comes off Goku in that moment is not the gold of the earlier transformation. It is something deeper and more complete. Something that Vision's instruments register as a power level that causes his internal processing to run 3 consecutive verification checks, because the number his sensors are producing is a number that should not be attached to a single biological entity, and all 3 verification checks come back with the same number. And Vision goes very still in the way he goes still when he has encountered something that genuinely exceeds his existing models. Thor feels it before he sees it, the way he felt it when he first landed in the field and his body sent him that signal about proximity to something extraordinary. Except that what he felt then was a whisper, and what he feels now is the full voice. And the full voice is something that reaches into the part of him that was forged in Asgard over 9 centuries of war and says, clearly and without ambiguity, that he is standing in the presence of a level of power that he has encountered perhaps 3 times in his entire existence, and each of those 3 times has marked him in ways that have not faded. And he tightens his grip on Mjolnir and calls the full storm because there is no longer any reason to hold anything back. The clouds coming in fast and dark and total, the lightning threading through them in continuous chains, and what he calls down on Goku is everything. The absolute full expression of the storm that lives in him, sustained and overwhelming and carrying within it the honest acknowledgement that this is the most serious he has been in a very long time. Goku stands in the center of the full Asgardian storm, and the lightning rolls over him and through him, and the blue aura absorbs it and processes it, and the expression on his face is the expression of someone standing in a warm rain, present and appreciative and entirely unharmed. And he looks up at Thor through the storm with something in his eyes that is not arrogance and not dismissal, but something closer to gratitude. The gratitude of someone who has been given a genuine gift, which is the gift of being pushed, and then he launches himself upward into the storm, and the exchange that follows between him and Thor in the middle of the lightning field is something that the people watching from the ground can only follow in fragments. A collision of force and response that moves faster than tracking is possible, that produces shockwaves felt on the ground as a continuous vibration, that lights up the sky in patterns that look less like a fight and more like 2 forces of nature, conducting a negotiation in the only language available to them. Tony and Rhodey go to maximum output simultaneously, every system in both suits pushed to the absolute ceiling of what the engineering can support. And they hit Goku from 2 sides in the moment he and Thor separate, and the combined strike is the most power Tony has ever directed at a single point in his life. And Goku takes it, and the aura flares around the impact, and his feet press into the air with slightly more resistance than before. A fraction of movement, barely measurable. And Tony sees that fraction and understands what it means, which is that the combined maximum output of 2 fully loaded Iron Man suits has produced a fraction of movement in something that is currently not at its full power. And this understanding does something to Tony's internal calculations that his internal calculations are not entirely equipped to process. So he does what he always does when his calculations fail him, which is push harder. Because pushing harder is the only response he has ever found that sometimes changes the answer. Wanda and Vision engage together for the first time, combining the Hex with the full output of the Mind Stone in a configuration they have theorized about but never tested. And the combined effect on the reality immediately surrounding Goku is something that Wanda can feel working, can feel bending the probability field around him in ways that are genuinely affecting the space he occupies. And Goku looks at the combined effect with that tilted head expression of someone encountering something new. And then he does something that neither of them anticipated, which is engage with it, not resist it, not push through it, but actually engage with it the way a martial artist engages with a technique they want to understand, feeling its shape and its direction and its intention. And the engagement lasts 4 seconds, during which Wanda can feel him understanding what she is doing faster than she can change what she is doing. And then he steps through it, cleanly and completely, the way you step through a door. And on the other side of it, his expression has added something new to the gratitude that was already there, which is respect, genuine and specific respect for what she just attempted. And Wanda receives that respect and feels, despite everything, despite the scale of what she is looking at, something that is almost pride. And then Goku looks at all of them, at the full assembly pushed to their limits and beyond their limits, at Thor with his storm, at Tony with his failing readouts, at Wanda breathing hard from the effort of the Hex, At Vision running verification check after verification check on numbers that keep coming back the same. At Steve standing at the edge of the field with his shield and his absolute refusal to stand down. And Goku's expression does something that none of them expected it to do, which is become serious, not angry, not threatening, but serious in the way that a person becomes serious when they have decided that the moment in front of them deserves their complete and undivided honesty. And he reaches up and adjusts his collar, and he says that they are incredible, says it simply and directly and without any performance. And then he says that he has not gone beyond blue yet today, and the field goes completely silent. And in that silence, the weight of what he has just said settles over every person present like a physical thing. Because beyond blue is a direction that points towards something that none of their instruments have ceiling enough to measure. And the silence holds for 3 full seconds before anyone speaks. And the person who speaks is Steve Rogers. Because Steve Rogers always speaks into the silences that other people are not sure how to fill. And what Steve says, in the quiet, steady voice he uses when he has made a decision that he knows is right even though it is hard, is that they are not done yet. And Goku looks at him across the silent field and smiles the widest smile he has smiled since he landed. Because that answer, that specific answer from that specific man, is exactly what he was hoping someone would say. Steve Rogers has been afraid before, genuinely afraid, not the manageable fear that sits in the chest during a firefight and sharpens the senses, but the deeper kind. The kind that comes from understanding the full scale of what you are facing, and understanding simultaneously that understanding it does not give you any additional tools for dealing with it. And he has learned over the years that this kind of fear has exactly one correct response, which is to move toward it anyway. Not because moving toward it changes the odds, because it often does not, but because the alternative is to stop being the person who moves toward things. And stopping being that person is the only outcome he has ever considered genuinely unacceptable. And so he moves across the silent field toward Goku, with his shield on his arm and his feet steady on the fractured earth. And every person watching him move understands without being told what he is doing and why. And one by one, they fall in behind him. Thor and Tony and Wanda and Vision and Rhodey and Natasha and Clint. The full assembly moving together across the field toward the man in the orange gi who watches them come with an expression that has completed its journey from friendly to interested to engaged to something that lives beyond all of those. Something that has no clean name but that feels, to everyone moving toward it, like being genuinely seen. What follows is the most complete expression of everything the Avengers are capable of, not the escalating sequence of individual engagements that preceded it, but a simultaneous total commitment. Every power and every skill and every strategy deployed at once in the coordinated way that years of fighting together has made possible. Thor calling the storm to its absolute maximum, while Tony and Rhodey create overlapping fields of fire from opposite angles, while Wanda bends the reality of the space around Goku, in the most aggressive application of the hex she has ever attempted, while Vision brings the Mind Stone to full output. And Steve comes in low and fast from a direction that the other engagements have left briefly open. And for a single moment, for one extraordinary compressed second, all of it lands simultaneously. And the energy release from that simultaneous landing is enough to flatten the grass in a radius of 200 meters and crack the earth in a spiderweb pattern that extends outward from the center of the engagement in every direction. And the sound of it reaches the city 40 miles away as a low rolling thunder that makes people look up from what they are doing and check the sky. When everything clears, Goku is still standing, and he is breathing slightly harder than he was before, and the blue aura around him has intensified rather than diminished, feeding on what was thrown at it the way fire feeds on oxygen. And he looks at his hands again the way he looked at them when Wanda first engaged him. Except that this time the expression that accompanies the looking is not the expression of encountering something new. It is the expression of someone who has arrived at a decision that has been building for a while and has finally become clear. And he looks up from his hands at the assembled Avengers, at all of them breathing hard and pushing through the effort of sustaining everything they have been sustaining. And he says that he wants to show them something, says it in the same easy voice he has used for everything, but with a quality in it now that makes the easy voice feel like the surface of something very deep. And nobody in the field says anything, because nobody in the field is entirely sure what the correct response is to being told that Goku wants to show you something when Goku is currently in Super Saiyan Blue, and has just absorbed the full simultaneous output of every Avenger without going down. The transformation that follows is not loud, and it is not explosive in the way that the previous ones were. It is instead something quieter and more complete, a deepening rather than an escalation. The blue giving way to something that Vision's instruments immediately flag as beyond their measurement range, and that Thor feels in his bones before his eyes have fully processed what they are seeing. And the aura that comes off Goku in this form fills the field not with pressure but with presence. A quality of being that makes the air feel inhabited in every direction simultaneously, and Goku stands in the center of it with his eyes closed for a moment. Just a moment. The way someone closes their eyes when they want to be fully in a thing rather than observing it. And when he opens them, the expression in them is the most honest thing he has shown all day, which is joy, simple and complete and entirely genuine. The joy of someone who loves what they are doing more than they can easily explain, and who has found in this field with these people a reason to do it fully. He does not attack, and this is the thing that matters most about what happens next, because everything that has come before has been exchange and response, and the mutual language of force meeting force. But what Goku does in this moment is simply stand in the full expression of what he is, and let it be visible. Let the scale of it be present in the field without direction or aggression, and the Avengers stand in the presence of it and feel it the way you feel standing at the edge of something vast. The specific combination of smallness and expansion that comes from encountering something that genuinely exceeds your existing sense of what is possible. And nobody moves, and nobody speaks. And the field holds that stillness for a long moment that nobody will afterward be able to accurately measure in time, because time does not feel like the right unit for what is happening in it. Steve is the one who moves first, and what he does is lower his shield, not drop it, not surrender it, but lower it deliberately, consciously, the way you lower something when you are making a choice rather than accepting a defeat. And he looks at Goku across the still field, and he says that they are not going to beat him today. Says it with the clarity of someone who has made peace with a true thing. And Goku looks back at him and nods once. The nod of someone receiving an honest statement with the respect it deserves. And then Steve says the second part, which is the part that changes the quality of the moment entirely, which is that they will be ready next time. And he says it not as a threat and not as a boast, but as a simple declaration of intent. The declaration of someone who has looked at an impossible thing and decided that impossible is a starting point rather than a conclusion. Goku is quiet for a moment after this, the Kai settling around him like something breathing out, and then he says that he hopes so, and he means it in every direction the words can be meant. He hopes so because a world that can grow toward what it faced today is a world worth coming back to. And he hopes so because the feeling in his chest right now, the feeling of having found people who refuse to stop even when stopping was the only rational option, is a feeling he wants to find again. And he looks at all of them one more time, At the whole assembly standing in the fractured field with the storm Thor has let dissolve still clearing from the sky above them. And he smiles the smile that started this whole thing. The open, uncomplicated smile of someone who came here to find something and found more than they were looking for. And then he is gone, ascending straight up into the clearing sky the way he descended. A straight vertical line of intention. And in seconds, he is beyond the range of Tony's instruments. And in a few more seconds, he is beyond the range of anything they have. And the field is quiet and still and full of the particular silence that follows something that has permanently changed the shape of what everyone present believes is possible. Fury receives the full report that evening and reads it twice. And when he is done reading it the second time, he sits for a long moment looking at nothing in particular and thinking about the word ready, about what it means and what it costs, and how long it takes to become true. And then he opens a new file and begins to write. And the file he opens is not the incident report and not the threat assessment. It is something he has been building slowly for a long time. Something he adds to only when something happens that genuinely expands the definition of what the Avengers need to be prepared for. And what he writes at the top of the new section is simply a question, 4 words. The question that will drive the next phase of everything. And the question is, how do you train for that? And below the question he leaves the rest of the page blank, because the answer is not something that exists yet. And the blank page is not an admission of defeat. It is an invitation, and Fury has always believed that the right invitation, left open long enough, eventually finds the person who can answer it. Somewhere above the atmosphere, moving at a speed that makes the stars blur at the edges of his vision, Goku is thinking about Steve Rogers lowering his shield and saying next time, and the thought makes him smile again. And he increases his speed, heading back toward his own universe with the particular lightness of someone who has spent a day doing exactly what they love with people who deserved every bit of it. And the universe he is heading back to does not know yet what is going to happen when he gets there and tells Vegeta what he found. But that is a story for another time, and the fact that it is a story for another time is, in itself, a kind of promise.